Yo, what's going on everyone? Today we're going to be going over XRP's price action once again with a bit more focus on the shorter time frames, and we're going to try to find some optimal entries in preparation for the anticipated breakout of this BD trend line that we have been looking at for this triangle for quite some time. Now the BD trend line is just a reference to the upper boundary of the triangle within a bullish triangle structure, and since we are positioned within a macro wave 4 of the primary degree, and just a quick note, the best position for a triangle is within a wave 4 because it shows characteristics of accumulation, or in Elliott Wave Theory terminology, a sideways structure. We are expecting a massive breakout to happen, or at least anticipating it with the current setup that we have, since we have all the necessary subwaves created. Now, the lower boundary is also known as the AC trend line, which is important in terms of support and gives us the clear invalidation levels in the case we do drop. That is why the Elliott Wave Theory is an excellent tool to use, because it gives you clear invalidation levels and validation levels. So if we break the soft invalidation level, as you can see here on the micro time frame regional lows, that gives us a little bit of a warning that we may have to look into a different alternative wave count, and the hard invalidation of the triangle in itself would be the breakage of this previous C wave, and we aren't even close to that since we did get a 70% bounce off of the lows. So that's a quick way to reference on where you may be positioned within the triangle, and so far so good. Everything is being positioned very nicely, and this 70% off the lows and retesting this BD trend line, the probabilities of a breakout to eventually happen is much higher than actually coming down and breaking this invalidation of the triangle. So I do expect this triangle to eventually have a violent breakout once we do breach the BD trend line, and my targets still remain around the $5 to $10 regions. We are still finding the BD trend line, or kind of fiddling around it, and the more you retest the upper boundary of a trend line, the higher chance of a breakout may occur. So that's something to keep in mind as well. So let's zoom in and discuss this last part of the subwave E, how it's constructed, talk about its validation and invalidation levels, and what optimal entries we can get out of it, because that is something that we haven't really discussed in our previous videos. So as you can see here, we are in that last part where this subwave E has terminated, and we did get that bounce off of the lows, and we're going to be finding how we can be looking for that continuation to eventually look for that trend line to break. But first, let's talk about how this subwave E has terminated. We can look at it two different ways. We have a possible WXY or a possible ABC. Now, this WXY is more reserved for a 1-2-1-2 count that I didn't share in this video, but it is there just in case, so that we can have a different way of viewing a possible corrective structure going into that subwave E. But this ABC is just as fine because the termination point is the same. Another note is that within a triangle, you can only have one WXY, which is a complex structure, and the remaining subwaves of the ABCDE, either of those, if you use up one WXY for any of those subwaves, you can only have simple zigzags or ABCs, and that's why we have this possible ABC structure as the final possibility to validating that subwave E on the micro time frames. So it really doesn't matter, because this last part of this 5-wave move going into that wave C of either scenario fits just fine. So that is why we have this possible ABC or WXY going into that subwave E. But since we have already exhausted that WXY, this ABC is going to be more suited towards finishing that subwave E on the macro. So with that being said, we do have that 5-wave move completed. Very, very difficult structure to count here, but I can count 5 waves, which is this 1, 2. We have a flat for wave 2, impulsive wave 3, and then we have a triangle for wave 4, and then an ending expanding diagonal going into a wave 5, and that right there is going to be completing that pretty relatively nice looking structure. Although we do have some very obscure complex structures being created, we do have a pretty nice looking 5-wave structure in itself in its entirety for that 5th wave to complete for that wave C, or C of W, or C of Y rather. Now what's important is how can we get out of this breakage or break that BD trend line. Now if we zoom in even further, on the hourly time frame, this is going to be giving us a little bit more information on how we can be continuing out of here. So we have a few ways again to look at how this has terminated for this wave 1, because we are looking for 5 waves out of here to continue the bullish momentum. Now what's important is that we do have 5 waves being completed into this wave 1. That is the very first move that we are looking for. Now, one very important characteristic that we can get out of this 5-wave move is that it's very confident, because we had a 71% move off of the lows. That right there is very indicative of a possible impulsive move rather than a corrective move. Now, Could be really anything. We can count this as a corrective structure if we really wanted to, but for now, we are seeing this as an impulsive structure because of that 70% off the lows, and the bulls are in control. So what that means is even with this dip that we had over here, and we had another strong impulse off of the lows here, that's giving us a very, very strong confident booster that really we are looking for higher levels because of these strong bounces that we're seeing. Now, this could be counted a little bit differently depending on how you're seeing it. You can see we have the possible alternative that this primary wave 1 could end here as well, where we have 5 waves up into this wave here as the wave 1 instead of 3. Now, if that's the case, we're going to be seeing this as a possible ABC, expanded flat structure. Now, both of these are absolutely fine in terms of the wave counting. I'm saying this because I've done all of the Fibonacci retracement counts. So if we're seeing this as an ABC and we're taking the origin of this to this pivot, it did hit the 161.8% zone, which is our 261.8% zone, which is a very, very extended target for wave C. However, it did hit exactly at that level. So if we do it again and check it out, it did surpass the 161.8, but if we look at the 261.8% level, hit really in that zone right there, which is the maximum intended level for a wave C to hit for an expanded flat. So either way, if you're seeing this as an expanded flat 1-2 or having the wave 1-2 and having this as a sharp ABC, absolutely fine. Doesn't really matter. Now, what is important is going to be the continuation, right? We're still looking for signs of continuation. Now, either this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 going into an intermediate degree of wave 1 of a lesser degree, since we've already completed this 1, 2, or have assumed it, is that we're looking as an ABC completion, and we're now looking for a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 going into another minor degree of a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 going into this possible move to the upside for this intermediate wave 3. This move here is what's going to be eventually breaking that trend line, and that is why I'm looking for a continuation to the upside. So either way, now we have two ways of possibly looking at this for this corrective structure. This is either completed for this 1-2, or we may be looking for another complex structure that may bring us down into a little bit of a lower level around these levels here. So if we take the assumption that this wave 1 has completed to the upside of this intermediate degree, we're going to look at the major Fibonacci levels in terms of support. So the 61.8% zone, the golden zone, what is known as, is going to be very important in terms of support. So if this structure is completed, we're looking for higher levels. And if in the case we do come down, we do have another area of support, which is going to be this level here around the 50-cent level. And that's a good even spot for a possible level. And let's see if we are going to be going into that zone with the trend-based Fibonacci extension. And that leads us into that zone as well if we're going to be assuming that this is the top of a B wave or an X wave rather, because what we can say here is that if this is an ABC, again, if this is completed, this would be the wave 2. And if we're working in a more complex structure as a WXY, remember that's multiple zigzags, we can say that this is now possibly working in a WXY rather than having the wave 2 complete there. So what that means is within a WXY, you're looking for an ABC going into wave W, some kind of ABC going into wave X, and now you're looking for a partner leg against this wave W as another wave Y. So that gives us multiple zigzags, eventually creating another type of three-way move as a more complex structure. So that will bring us into that level of these regions here. No problem. We're still being supported above the micro time frame support. And then we have this level here, which is going to be another very important level to be supported. So this is going to be extremely important for a level of the intermediate degree, of a lesser degree, since we don't want to be invalidating it as opposed to this primary wave 2. We don't want to be going past that. So this level here, we still do have a lot of room before we can actually come up and validate breaking that BD trend line that I was talking about. So we are seeing it as two ways. This would be the more optimal entry if you're looking at it. Again, the possible strategy here, not financial advice, is possibly just DCAing it, right? Dollar cost averaging this. This would be the possible best way. And the strategy would be to just kind of approach this as if you're seeing this as a complex structure where we're looking for a little bit of a lower level. It all really is going to depend on Bitcoin's structure as well. So going forward, if this wave 2 is complete, which is a very high possibility as well, where we just say that this wave 2 is completed, then we're just going to be looking for higher levels. And that next invalidation level for this level would be this level here. So a breach of this level here of this previous low, we just assume that this wave 2 is working a little bit deeper. And then we're working for that wave 3 to the upside. So that is how we do a top-down analysis on XRP, ladies and gentlemen. We've narrowed down to the micro time frames. We've narrowed down this scenario here for that subwave E. And then ultimately, we're looking for the ultimate breakout of this BD trend line that we're going to be looking for. And this target of the $5 to $10 region is going to be our ultimate target, because that is just the conservative target that's based on the post thrust measurement, which takes the widest part of the triangle, and then you take it from the apex or the final point or point of this subwave E, and then you measure it, and that gives us around 1,000 to 2,000% gain. So I'm looking very, very heavily into XRP. I'm monitoring it very nicely because it is something that is very, very important in terms of how crypto is going to be moving forward. It's usually the most hated or the most loved coins. So this is something to definitely look out for. And definitely, since we are above this invalidation of this triangle here, well above it, we still have around a 50% move to the downside before we actually invalidate this triangle entirety in its entirety. So this is something to look out for, ladies and gentlemen. I think this is going to be a very, very important breakout for XRP going forward. This BD trend line is being retested many, many times, 4 times so far, and it looks like it's going for the 5th time now. This is going to be very interesting. So we'll see, and we'll monitor it. We'll continue to monitor it. If we need to shift focus in terms of how, if we do actually come down, we'll make sure to also go over that as well. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully that was helpful. If you're not already, please do follow me on social media on X at XForce Global. I do a lot of my daily updates there as well. And if you're interested in joining the XForce Discord membership, please don't hesitate to contact me. The link is in the description below as well. Thank you very much. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.